Hey Bio 20s, I'm back again for another lesson. Today we're going to start chapter 10. We're going to talk about your different blood vessels, their different functions, and what they do and how they make up your circulatory system. So let's get going here. Would you believe it? I forgot my pen downstairs again. I'll just go run and grab it real quick. I'll take the elevator this time though. I think it'll be a little quicker. Okay, now that I have it, we can get going. So to start, I just want to show you a diagram of the various blood vessels throughout the body. There's a few key ones that I would like to highlight that I want you to know for sure. Now, as we look at the different blood vessels, we're going to look at different veins and arteries. So arteries being blood vessels that carry blood away from the heart, and veins being blood vessels that carry blood towards the heart. Now, two of the blood vessels we've already discussed in class. We've talked about the renal artery and the renal vein. What do those two blood vessels do? Well, the renal artery carries blood into the kidneys, and the renal vein carries blood out of the kidneys. A couple other arteries you may have heard about before that we're going to discuss here. The aorta. So the aorta is what we kind of refer to as the sort of the main artery, right? It's going to be the big artery that comes from the heart and then eventually extends down the body as well as to up towards the brain and then branches off into different arteries as well. The other artery we're going to talk about is the pulmonary artery, also very, very important. Pulmonary arteries carry blood to the lungs so that they get oxygenated. The pulmonary vein would then of course carry blood from the lungs back to the heart. And then we also have the inferior and the superior vena cava. And these would be kind of your main veins if you want to think of it like that. So this would be the main vein that carries blood, inferior basically from your feet all the way back up to your heart, and then the superior from your head all the way back to your heart. One other artery we're going to talk about as well is the coronary artery. This is the artery that actually supplies blood to the heart, because remember, the heart is a muscle. It too needs oxygen to function and pump. So I want to start here by just talking about arteries themselves. So arteries, and this is very key, you need to know this, arteries always, always, always carry blood away from the heart. Does not matter what artery, it will always carry blood leaving the heart. It will always carry blood away from the heart. They have thick walls with very distinct layers, thick muscular walls to help deal with the high pressure that they're under, and also to help pump blood, right? Help pump blood away from the heart. High pressure, like I mentioned, they do have high pressure, and also when the heart contracts, there's a surge, right? There's a surge through the arteries, and they stretch, or they're elastic, so they can accommodate this surge of blood. So when blood is pumped out of the heart, the arteries will stretch and expand, accommodating for the surge of blood. And you guys can actually feel that right now. It's your pulse. So easiest place to feel your pulse is on your side of your neck here, or you can try your wrist as well. You can actually feel for that surge, that little pulse of blood. So arteries, once again, just to recap, they carry blood away from the heart. They have thick, muscular, elastic walls, and they're generally under high pressure, so they're pumping blood to the body. Or, of course, the lungs. Next, as arteries get smaller, they become, or they branch off into, smaller versions. We call them arterioles. Arterioles are actually controlled by our autonomic or our unconscious nervous system. So arterioles can actually change their size. So they can constrict or dilate depending on the situation. So for example, vasoconstriction would be our blood vessels constricting, getting smaller, and this would reduce blood flow. So a person might go pale because they're not getting enough blood flow to a certain area. You would do vasoconstriction when you would want to, say, conserve heat, right? So you would conserve heat, you wouldn't want to be losing heat, so you're holding on to that, right? You're constricting your blood vessels. You also might constrict certain blood vessels at certain parts of the body. So say it's a stressful situation, you don't want blood flow going to your digestive system because you don't want to be digesting a sandwich when you're trying to run away from a bear. So you actually constrict blood flow to certain areas of the body. You can also do the opposite, where you dilate your blood vessels, dilate your arterioles to increase blood flow to certain parts of the body. And also, if you're very hot or your internal body temperature is increasing, you might undergo vasodilation to increase blood flow and also reduce or release heat as well. Then moving along here, so we go from arteries to smaller arterioles, and then the arterioles are going to join up into capillaries. Now, we've already talked about capillaries a little bit in the digestive and the excretory system, as well as the respiratory system. They are the site of fluid, nutrient, and gas exchange. So this is where things are exchanged between cells and the blood. So you'll find capillaries in your digestive system in the villi, you'll find them in the respiratory system on the alveoli, and you'll find them in the excretory system surrounding your nephrons. So you'll find capillaries scattered throughout your body. And this is where the blood and the tissue exchange waste, nutrients, fluids, things like that. Now, if we look at a capillary here, you'll notice that the blood vessels, as they go through the capillary, go single file. So I like to think of it as traffic, right? So the artery would be a 6-lane highway. So we got 6 lanes of cars just going, right? And then those 6 lanes eventually get funneled into 3 lanes. So now the 6-lane highway becomes a 3-lane highway, right? So now there's only 3 lanes that cars can go into. And then finally, that 3-lane highway becomes a single-lane highway where now cars are driving single file. Now, why would you do that? Why would you want your blood cells moving single file? Well, there's a reason for it. It slows it down to allow for nutrient waste and fluid, as well as gas exchange. So now, as these blood cells are flowing single file, things can have enough time to exchange between the blood and our cells. Now, capillaries are easily destroyed or damaged, and this is what can cause bruising in some cases. Now, when we talk about the actual exchange at the arterial end, you'll notice that the net filtration pressure is about plus 10 millimeters of mercury. What that means is the pressure is higher here than outside. So basically what we have here is we have our capillary, which is our blood, we have our tissue, and then in between our tissue and our blood, we have this space called the extracellular fluid. So things are going to be filtered or be pulled from the capillary into our tissue. Mid-capillary, there's a net change or a net pressure change of 0. So there's very little movement. And then when we reach the venous end or the venule end, you'll notice that it's the opposite. It's about a -7. So now the pressure is higher outside than it is inside, and then things will be reabsorbed in the capillary. So we filter things out, and then we reabsorb them back here. And when we do that, it's an exchange, right, of gases, CO2 and oxygen, of nutrients, glucose, amino acids, fatty acids, as well as waste products, nitrogenous waste, things like that. So when blood cells flow through the capillary, things are being exchanged and filtered, right? Next, as we continue along our path of blood cells, we're going to hit the venules. So we're going to go arterioles to we're going to go from arteries to arterioles to capillaries and now venules. Venules are essentially smaller veins. So you'll have an arterial end of a capillary and a venule end of a capillary. Now, they also contain smooth muscle, but the pressure is quite low. The pressure in venules and veins are quite low in comparison to the arteries and the arterioles. Finally, ending here, we're going to talk about the veins. So what you need to know about the veins, always, veins carry blood where? Towards the heart. They always carry blood towards the heart. Sometimes it contains oxygen, sometimes it does not, but it's always going towards the heart. The increase in diameter as they approach the heart, so that means their width across increases as they approach the heart. They are low pressure blood vessels. So whereas arteries are high pressure, veins are low pressure. And finally, they contain these special valves that help keep blood moving in one direction. And I'll show you how that works here. So since veins are actually low pressure blood vessels, we have a difficult time actually pushing blood to the heart. Because how are you going to get blood from your foot to your heart if gravity is pushing it this way, but you want to go this way? Well, there's 2 ways your body does this. Number 1 is when your skeletal muscles contract, blood gets pushed up. So your skeletal muscles will contract and actually push blood up towards the heart. It will open up these valves, but these valves are only one-way valves. So blood can flow through the valves, but when it's done flowing, they close shut and prevent the backflow of blood. If we didn't have this, blood would just pool in our feet, which would be a bad thing. So the blood will be pushed up through the skeletal muscle, with the skeletal muscles, and then the valves will close shut, preventing the backflow of blood. So, what do you need to know about blood vessels? 1, arteries. What do they do? Some different characteristics about them. 2, what do capillaries do? And then 3, veins, various characteristics and what they do. So that's the lesson for today. Next lesson, we're going to go into the parts of the heart. We'll actually talk about how the heart works and the various parts associated with it, and also how blood flows through the heart and gets to all the various parts of your body. So thanks for watching, and we'll chat soon.